Naturally Plus affiliates. During the past 2 decades, many of you have heard me talk about superlutein and the concept of multi-carotenoid, which is a dietary supplement produced by Naturally Plus. In nearly all of these presentations, I have talked about the scientific evidence that supports the health benefits of multi-carotenoid dietary supplement. But today, I want to talk to you about the history of lutein and how I became involved with research on carotenoids. Of course, this would not be complete without telling you a little bit about my scientific background. I received my PhD from University of Manchester Institute of Science and Technology at the Department of Chemistry. And then I moved to the United States in 1979 and started a postdoctoral research program in photochemistry, nothing to do with carotenoids. And after completing my research at the University of Maryland in 1983, I joined the U.S. Department of Agriculture Human Nutrition Research Center that had an open position for a research chemist. My initial research goal was to identify fruits and vegetables that contain beta-carotene, which is a precursor of vitamin A. And this was because the U.S. Department of Agriculture Human Nutrition Research Center had an agreement with the National Cancer Institute to complete this research and find out the exact amount of vitamin A that we can get from our foods. Just to give you a background, vitamin A does not exist in fruits and vegetables. Instead, beta-carotene, which is the orange compound found in carrots, is actually a precursor of vitamin A. That is, our body actually takes beta-carotene and in part converts it to vitamin A. And of course, vitamin A is very essential for many reasons. It has many health benefits. So when I started my work, the first thing I did, I started actually looking into the literature to see what was known about, in general, carotenoids in fruits and vegetables. And to my great surprise, there was not much work had done in this area. At any event, I used to go to the local supermarkets and buy all these fruits and vegetables, bring them to the lab, and extracting them to find out the exact amount of beta-carotene in these foods. But once again, in my surprise, my great surprise was that these fruits and vegetables did not just contain beta-carotene. They had many other carotenoids that I had then identified using my organic chemistry skills. So this was in the first year of my work at the USDA, and in 1 year, I was able to identify at least a whole bunch of carotenoids in green fruits and vegetables, such as broccoli, spinach, cabbage, kale, green beans, green peas, and so on. In 1984, I attended an international conference on carotenoids, which was held in Munich, Germany. This is a conference that is held every 3 years in a different country. And later on, in fact, in 1987 was held in Boston, and in 1990 was held in Kyoto, Japan. At any event, in 1984, at that conference, I presented my research findings on distribution of carotenoids in green fruits and vegetables, and I pointed out that lutein was the major carotenoids found in these foods. Most of my colleagues, or basically people that were attending this conference, always ask me, well, why are you interested in lutein? It has no vitamin A activity. And in fact, the entire conference focus was on beta-carotene. When I came back to United States, I continued my research on carotenoids, and I was really surprised at why there is such an ignorance about non-vitamin A active carotenoids. So I started publishing more papers on distribution of carotenoids in fruits and vegetables, and this basically took place between 1983, when I started my work, until 1990. In 1989, actually, one of my colleagues was this lady that she was a vegetarian, and she came to me and she said, well, you've done so much work with fruits and vegetables. What about analyzing my blood? Because, I'm a vegetarian, and I eat a lot of these fruits and vegetables that you have analyzed. So basically, we took her blood, and I did the analysis, and I found very interesting results, because even in her blood there was significant amount of lutein, lycopene, the red pigment in tomatoes, and there was also beta carotene, but lutein and lycopene were the major carotenoids, and beta carotene was also, of course, a prominent carotenoid in her blood. In addition to finding these carotenoids, what I found was oxidation products of lutein and zeaxanthin, which is another carotenoid that is of particular interest. Finding oxidation products of lutein and zeaxanthin suggested to me that these carotenoids had great antioxidant properties. Now, why this is important is because oxidation and disease are very much related. Oxidative stress causes a lot of oxidation in our body and basically damages the cells, and oxidation also causes inflammation. In other words, there's oxidation inflammation caused by oxidative stress. So I basically figured out that if lutein and zeaxanthin and lycopene are the ones that are producing these oxidation products, they must have a great antioxidant ability. So in order to promote this idea that these carotenoids were important, I had to basically collaborate with a number of researchers in order to find out if these carotenoids were of particular importance. One of the first collaborators I had was Professor Nishino at the Kyoto Prefectural University of Medicine in Kyoto. Professor Nishino had a lot of experience with doing animal studies on carotenoids, and I provided him with these carotenoids that he could test in animal models, and he was basically working on prevention of cancer. And we published some papers together that actually helped the other scientists who were skeptical of our basically idea of non-vitamin active carotenoid being important, started kind of paying attention to some of these other carotenoids. And in 1990, when I went to Kyoto, Japan at the International Carotenoid Conference, I was an invited speaker, and I gave a talk about all of these carotenoids in fruits and vegetables, as well as how these carotenoids actually end up in the human blood. After that, systematically, I went through analysis of various organs and tissues in humans. And at that time, there was an interesting epidemiological paper that came out that suggested lutein and zeaxanthin may have a beneficial effect in prevention of an eye disease called age-related macular degeneration. I teamed up with the scientists at the National Eye Institute, as well as Dr. Paul Bernstein at the University of Utah, and they provided me with samples of the human eye tissue, donor human eye tissues, and I found that lutein and zeaxanthin and their oxidation products were also present in the ocular tissues that I had examined. This further showed that there was a role for these carotenoids to play in our body. After that, we also did a number of studies to show the anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties of carotenoids. We found carotenoids in the human skin, and of course that was very important in prevention of skin damage and prevention of sunburns and preventing wrinkling of the skin. So there was a lot of very interesting studies, but one of the interesting things I did not tell you so far was that the first supplementation studies that I carried out was on myself and two of my colleagues, and this was done at the USDA in early 1990. Basically, I convinced two of my colleagues to take 10 milligram of lutein on a bagel put in olive oil and spread on a bagel for 3 weeks. And then we had our blood taken, and then I analyzed the blood of all three of us and found that lutein was very well absorbed, as well as zeaxanthin, very well absorbed into our bloodstream. This was a very important paper, and of course this was followed by another study that I did with 20 milligram of lutein on myself only, and that showed that there is a dose dependency between the amount of lutein that you take and the amount that actually ends up in the blood. And the third study that I did was with zeaxanthin, which is a very similar carotenoid to lutein, but structurally is a little bit different. Zeaxanthin also is an important carotenoid that accumulates in the eye. These studies helped me to write a very detailed report for the Food and Drug Administration in the United States and obtain what we call investigational new drug application that allows people to do clinical studies with lutein and able to basically determine the dose and bioavailability of this carotenoid in humans. I was also able to make connection with Dr. Emily Chu at the National Eye Institute, who told me that you took 20 milligrams of lutein. I really need to examine your eye to see if there is any potential problem or toxicity of this carotenoid, because she had not heard about lutein actually accumulating in the eye, even though she had conducted the very first supplementation study with beta carotene. And of course, she was a very distinguished scientist at the National Eye Institute. After she examined my eye, she said, "You're perfectly fine. There's no problem with supplementation with lutein." And this was very important because we made a connection at that time, and I said to Dr. Emily Chu, "You have already carried out studies with beta carotene, actually 2 studies with beta carotene. ARADS-1 was the first one, and why don't we do a second study with lutein this time?" She said, "Well, we need some preliminary data in order to do that." So I collaborated with her on a study that was carried out at the National Eye Institute with 45 subjects at various stages of macular degeneration, which is an eye disease. And she basically divided the patients into 3 categories: early stage AMD, mid stage AMD, and late stage of macular degeneration. The blood samples were then sent to my university at Maryland, and then when I analyzed these, we determined that the dose that was appropriate for supplementation, at least for a long-term supplementation, was 10 milligram, because we had started with 2.5, 5, and 10 milligram, and the 10 milligram dose was what we had suggested. This actually set up a foundation for a larger clinical trial, which was later on carried out by Dr. Emily Chu, known as ARADS-2. I think there were about greater than 4,500 subjects in that study that showed that a beneficial role for lutein and zeaxanthin in the prevention of AMD, particularly the wet type of AMD at the end stage of AMD. So this was another area that was very interesting and was only possible because of that very first IND report that I wrote for the Food and Drug Administration, because without that report, you could not conduct a clinical trial. So I felt really good about this. And I said, wow, this is a 12th center around the United States that conducted its ARADS-2, and that was very helpful for finding the beneficial role of lutein and zeaxanthin in prevention of macular degeneration. Now, all of this would not be possible if we did not actually have production of lutein on an industrial scale. And how did that come about? Well, as I mentioned, in early 1990, I became very interested in lutein. So I started investigating to find out where I can actually obtain lutein. And it turned out that I was told that there is a company in Des Moines, Iowa, with the name of Chemin, that actually may have an extract of marigold flowers that contains lutein. Now, this company had a long history of basically obtaining the petals of marigolds from Central and South America, and of course, getting these petals and extracting them. And the yellow pigment in these petals were basically lutein to a great extent, almost 95%, and the other 5% was zeaxanthin. So Chemin was actually using these extracts to put them into the feed, or animal feed, poultry feed, and that would help to change the color of the egg yolk to yellow, because these pigments were of course yellow, and the skin of the chicken would become yellow. So when I contacted Chemin, they were very positive. They helped me to get a very large amount of this extract from marigold oleoresin, marigold flowers, which we call the marigold oleoresin. And I started working on isolation of lutein, and I was able to isolate some lutein for, as I mentioned, for the study that we did at the USDA. And of course, Chemin was very instrumental in helping me to come up with this lutein on an industrial scale. We had a patent. I had a first patent on lutein, and then Chemin developed a second patent, which is actually using propylene glycol as part of their process, which is accepted in food industry. So their process now was really very friendly and would avoid organic solvents. Therefore, this was the initiation of industrial production of lutein, which was actually commercially produced in 1996. And ironically, in 2021 is the 25th year anniversary of what lutein that is produced by Chemin, known as Floroglow lutein. So we're pretty excited. It's been 25 years now. And of course, after I finished at the University of Maryland in 2015, I moved to Chemin Industries, and I have been working since again on carotenoids. And this is a great opportunity that was provided to me when I left University of Maryland. So as you can see, USDA, Human Nutrition Research Center, some 14 years there, and some 18 years at University of Maryland, and so far 6 years at Chemin Industries. I have been fortunate that during all these years, almost 38 years. So if you ask me what is my major accomplishment during the past 38 years with regard to carotenoids, I would tell you just to bring the attention of the scientific community to other carotenoids besides beta-carotene. Of course, beta-carotene is also very important. I should mention that it's a very important carotenoid, providing us with vitamin A and alpha-carotene, which is also present in the superlutein dietary supplement. So that is the way I look at my past when I look at these 38 years of research, and the passion that I have for this research is really basically accelerated when I see you as affiliates of Naturally Plus and how excited you are about the superlutein and Metro Plus. So I want to thank Naturally Plus and you for doing all you can to promote the truth about carotenoids. And people want to stay healthy, and this is just the truth about carotenoids and their function in our body, and how we can stay healthy by consuming these dietary supplements, Metro Plus and superlutein. The other point that I want to make that is important is that Naturally Plus at this time is the only producer of multi-carotenoids. And this is very important because other manufacturers are basically promoting what they are selling. Some people selling lycopene, some selling lutein, but no companies to date has really used the idea of multi-carotenoids to put all of these carotenoids together, plus vitamin E, plus vitamin B, and DHA, and anthocyanins, and phenolic compounds to come up with this magical formula that Naturally Plus has. And for that, I just want to tell you, I love Super Lutein, I love Naturally Plus, and I love you for doing all you can, as I mentioned, to promote multi-carotenoid dietary supplement. I know it has been very difficult during the past year because of the COVID and the pandemic. So I have not been able to have a one-on-one interactions with you and come to this annual, usually celebration of Naturally Plus. But hopefully this will change. Things are coming slowly back to normal. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you all to tell you that how much I care about you and I care about Naturally Plus and I love Super Lutein. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk to you once again.